Now, in those 3 years you jumped, did you make some long-term relationships, guys that stayed in your life over the years?
Oh,
or
yeah.
Who are some of the people that you remember?
Well, there were a number of them. Jeff Davis. He's of course here in Silver City. He was kind of a flamboyant character. We did a lot of free falling together. He and I did. Wader, I knew him. I'd known him from high school, and still know where he is and what he's doing. Jerry Daniels is another one. T.J. Thompson is a good friend. That's the main ones I can think of right now.
So did you leave there for the service, or what? You left after 3 years?
At 3 years, I decided I wanted to go in the Border Patrol. Didn't know much about it. I just kind of read it. There wasn't much publicized about the Border Patrol in those days. You just hardly knew. There was only about 900 people in the whole Border Patrol in 1961. But anyway, I put in for it, took the test, and miraculously passed the test. I don't know how. That entry exam for the Border Patrol was incredibly difficult. But it was based on grammar, a lot of it, and I'd had good grammar teaching, even though I resisted in grade school and high school. I did learn grammar pretty well, parts of speech and that sort of thing. And when I took that test for the entry into the patrol, that stuff somehow came back into my head, and I was able to pass the test because of that. And then I went to the academy, and the academy is about 18 weeks long, pretty intense. You come out speaking some Spanish and knowing immigration law and so forth. I went to work in Lordsburg, New Mexico. I was the first Border Patrol trainee to go to Lordsburg, New Mexico. That's where I...
And so what was that job? Were you outside doing that job, or were you inside? What was that?
It is all about pursuing illegals in either out through the desert country or on ranches, or we did everything. We had a farm and ranch check type thing we did. We did what they call line watch, where you'd watch the border and try and catch people coming in. We did what they call sign cutting. We had roads that we drug with a drag, and we'd cruise those roads at daylight and see if there were tracks over them, and if there was, we'd track them down. We checked buses, east and west Greyhound buses through Lordsburg. We checked the airport in Silver City. We checked traffic on the interstate. It was just very rounded. And some days you'd do a combination of those. Sometimes you'd go for 2 weeks just working farms and ranches, looking for guys on a ranch, maybe building fence or something of that sort, or on the farms they'd be out hoeing cotton, or this sort of thing, just typical manual labor. So it was primarily outdoors, except that every time you apprehended somebody and then brought them in, you had to do what they call process them. You had to write them up, all that, who they were, what their name was, where they're from, date of birth, parents, da-da-da-da-da, all that sort of thing. All in Spanish, of course. So you get pretty good at speaking Spanish after a while.
So did you like that work?
I loved it. It's more darn fun than...
And then did you get to ride horses or anything like that?
There was a gap in there. The patrol used horses for years, and then they quit. And I don't know the politics of that decision, but somebody had decided that it was cheaper to run four-wheel drives and not have horses. Well, it's not as effective in some circumstances to have a four-wheel drive and no horses, particularly in this rough mountainous country here. So I hit a period of time, 20 years there, where there were no horses in the Border Patrol at all. And no dogs. No horses, no dogs. Somebody I think in Washington D.C. was not an animal lover or something. I don't know what the deal was. Anyway, so we did it all on foot with vehicles as best we could. And
Did you took an interest in sidearms and weapons, that kind of thing?
yeah, I really liked shooting a pistol, and I'd always kind of hunted with a pistol as a kid in Montana. I had a 22 Ivor Johnson 9-shot revolver that I shot a lot as a kid, and then I had a 44 Magnum Ruger Blackhawk, which was just an ugly beast of a gun, but I used to hunt deer with it. So when I went to the academy, the big emphasis was on pistols, pistol shooting, and I knew that the Border Patrol had a pistol team, and I thought, man, that'd be pretty neat to get on a pistol team. So I worked hard and on that. At the academy, I ended up second overall, second highest out of, I think there was about 80 of us there, and I was number 2 behind a guy that had come over from the Bureau of Prisons, and he was on their pistol team. He'd been shooting competitive pistol for years, and I almost beat him in the academy. I was like 1 or 2 points behind him. And so when I got out, I started going to pistol matches, and in about a year's time or a little less, I was on a pistol team, and stayed on the team till I was out of the patrol.
So when you were doing that, were you doing a lot of traveling, like to different meets, or was it just in this area?
No, it was, we'd shoot mostly Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico to start with. And then when we started out shooting bullseye type style, targets, and then they decided that they would go into this police combat where you shoot a man silhouette type thing with scoring rings in it. When we got into the police combat thing, it really took off for me. I was able to adapt to that really well, and we shot all over the United States, everywhere. I've shot in probably 40 of the states, something like that.
That's great. Well, so your career was well along in the Border Patrol. When did you take an interest in flying?
Well, right away, actually, because those guys would come out when we were tracking aliens. They'd come out with those Super Cubs, and they would really be a huge help, because they could see the tracks a lot of times, most of the time, and occasionally they would find the aliens themselves before we ever got to them. But primarily what the airplane did was it made the aliens bush up, lay down, and hide, and that would give us guys that were on the ground tracking them an opportunity to close the gap, because oftentimes they had maybe 5 miles on us, and it's hard to close the gap when you're tracking. Guy, if he's going about the same speed you are, you can't ever close the gap. So plane come in, force them to hide, and we close up. And it was very effective, very effective. It worked as a good team, When the pilot came in, he was basically kind of in charge, although they didn't ever really push it. But he was in charge of the operation. He'd direct us where to go and how to do it, and so on. Which we didn't really need much help with. That was the hierarchy of the system. And so I kept watching them do this and doing this and wishing I could do it. So I went and bought myself some flying lessons and learned how to fly in a little old BC 12D Taylor craft. 65 horse engine in it, which is just, it's like a motorized kite almost, Anyway, I got that and started building time, and you had to have, to be considered as a pilot, you had to have 1,500 hours, a commercial and an instrument rating, and most of your time had to be in a tail dragger, conventional gear airplane. So I went from the Taylor craft to a Super Cub. No, I went from Taylor craft to Super Cub, and then I went to a mall, and I just started building flying hours, it's hard to get 1,500 hours. That's a lot of flying
Yeah, it
time.
is.
Anyway, I kept building my time, and then I went and I got my instrument first, and then I got my commercial rating. And about the time I got my commercial rating, there were, I think, 8 pilot openings came up. There were only 43 pilots in the Border Patrol at that time, but a lot of them had come on as pilots at the same time. So there was kind of a mass exodus. And I had looked at that years before, and I thought, okay, I know all these guys and how many years they've got in the patrol and so on. And I said, okay, now this guy's going to have to retire again, and this and this and this. So I started calculating when the vacancies were going to start coming open, and I thought, okay, now I've got this much time to get this many hours and these ratings. And I hit it right on the nose.